r/writers of horror. Hosted by you/Carl1961. I'm A Voyeur. The other night I witnessed something terrifying. Yeah, call me what you will. A creep, a pervert, a sicko, a weirdo, a freak. All of those best describe me. I get off on watching other people screw. Judge me all you want, that's just the way I'm wired. We all have our kinks and fetishes. I started out as your run-of-the-mill horny teenaged peeping Tom spying on Mrs. Jacobson undressing in her bedroom across the street. I'd be crouched in front of my window with the lights off to avoid detection, a pair of binoculars pressed to my eyes, watching as she got ready for bed. I got pretty skilled at holding the binoculars with just one hand, if you catch my drift. It quickly evolved into full-out sexual voyeurism one night when I witnessed her getting it on with Mr. Jacobson. I found myself getting excited like never before watching them go at each other. Before, it had turned me on watching Mrs. Jacobson undress, but that had been different. It had been more impartial, if that makes sense. There was a big difference between non-sexual nudity and what I was seeing transpire in the upstairs window across from me right then at that moment. That was the night I discovered my true calling. Watching them have sex, unaware that they were being observed, got me more aroused than I ever had been up till that point in my life. Things changed for me after that. All my old fantasies and fetishes just wouldn't do it for me anymore. Regular porn seemed tame in comparison. From that point on I could only get it up by the thought of two people getting intimate while, unbeknownst to them, they were observed by a third party. I know what you're going to say, there's tons of adult video sites online dedicated to that particular subgenre, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, sure, I've tried them all, but they wouldn't cut it. Watching something that was clearly fake and staged wasn't the same thing as legitimately spying on two people fucking. I needed the real thing. I began to follow young couples around, trying to be covert, and when it seemed like they were in an amorous mood, I'd shadow them to some secluded location, a deserted park, a lover's lane, a vacant field, and I'd watch with my binoculars from a cautious distance as they got down to business. Then I'd pleasure myself and get the fuck out of there. It became a regular hobby for me. Some folks are into bird watching, I was into fuck watching. I didn't just limit myself to spying on hormone-crazed teenagers fooling around in public places, either. Sometimes I'd follow horny couples back to their homes and try to watch them through the windows, although these ventures weren't always as successful. It's hard to watch people having sex when they're in a second-story bedroom and you're standing outside on the ground below, and a lot of people have the good sense to close their curtains before things get too interesting. What I do is pretty risky, I guess, not to mention illegal. If I got caught, I'd probably be classed as a sex offender and face some stiff jail time. I've had some close calls, too. Twice I almost got busted by the cops. Once a pissed-off boyfriend spotted me and chased after me, threatening to kick my ass if he caught me. He almost did, too. But despite those scares, I just couldn't give it up. I got kind of addicted to it. Yeah, I've been a certified degenerate for 15 years or better. But after what happened a few nights ago, I don't think I'm going to be a voyeur anymore. Not after what I saw. It was Tuesday evening and I was on one of my usual prowls, cruising around in my car with my trusty binoculars beside me, on the lookout for anything that seemed promising. I was about to give up and call it a night when, on a very nice residential street in one of the better neighborhoods in town, I hit pay dirt. At an intersection, a boy of about 17 was standing on the sidewalk, waiting to cross on a red light. A late model silver Lexus pulled up beside him. There was only one person in the car, the driver. A woman. She lowered her passenger side window and said something to the kid on the sidewalk who turned to her. He seemed to recognize her and leaned into the passenger window. I stopped behind her, cracking my window to hear what they were saying. Woman, hello, Peter. Kid, oh, hi, Mrs. Jeffries. Woman, are you going somewhere? Kid, just on my way home from work. Woman, why don't you let me give you a ride? Kid, that's okay, Mrs. Jeffries. My house is only a couple blocks away. Woman, I was thinking we could stop at my place first. There's something I wanted to talk to you about. In private. She paused. My husband's out of town until Friday. The kid gawked at her. He seemed to think about it for a few seconds. She reached over and opened the passenger side door. Woman, get in, Peter. And get in he did. The light changed to green and the Lexus pulled away. I followed behind at a safe distance, keeping them in my sight. My heart was already starting to beat faster with excitement. This looked like a situation that had some potential. I tailed the Lexus down the street for several blocks until it slowed and turned into the driveway of a very affluent-looking two-story brick home. I parked at the curb several cars back and watched. The car stopped and the driver's side door opened. The woman got out. She was wearing a beige trench coat and leather gloves, very classy looking. She had a scarf tied around her head. The young kid got out on his side and she went around to him and whispered something in his ear. I watched him take his phone from his pocket and dial someone. He spoke briefly, then hung up. He followed her up to the front door. She unlocked it and they entered. I waited a couple minutes, then grabbed my binoculars, put the strap over my neck, and got out of my car. I glanced around to make sure there was no one around. Then I crept across the front lawn to a large window with some hedges in front of it. I crouched down and pushed through the hedges, using them as cover. I peered very carefully up over the edge of the window. I was looking into the living room. The place looked just as nice inside as it did outside. Very tastefully and expensively decorated. Very upper middle class. The teenage boy was sitting on the sofa. He had taken off his coat. He was wearing khaki pants and the polyester shirt of a fast food employee, complete with name tag. He was looking around the place, appearing a little nervous and awkward. Then the woman came into view. I got my first good look at her and, whoa. She was a fucking babe. She had taken off her coat, scarf and driving gloves and was dressed in a tight-fitting olive green blouse and a knee-length charcoal skirt, both of which looked like designer items. Her clothes clung to her figure, which was curvy and full in all the right places. Her breasts seemed like they were threatening to burst the buttons on her blouse. She looked like she was about 30. Her face was gorgeous, resembling a younger Angelina Jolie crossed with Carla Gugino. She had her chestnut-colored hair up in a bun which gave her the appearance of a naughty school teacher or a sexy librarian. A prim, modestly elegant woman who was probably secretly a wildcat in bed. She headed over to the sofa with 2 drinks in hand, giving one of them to the kid, then sitting beside him on the couch. They started talking. I pressed my ear to the glass but their voices were muffled and indistinct. Damn it, what were they saying? I spotted a different window close by that had been cracked open about an inch. I crept to it and put my ear against the narrow gap, listening intently. I could just make out their voices. Woman, so your mother shouldn't be expecting you back for a couple hours? The woman's voice was just as sexy as her body. Cultured, demure and alluring. Kid, yeah, I told her they asked me to stay over till 10. Woman, good. Then we have some time to get to know each other better. I peered into the window again. The woman had slid across the couch a few inches, closer to the boy. She rather pointedly crossed her legs. The hem of her skirt fell back a few inches, revealing, oh my fucking god, the scalloped edge of a white silk slip beneath it, and trailing out from under that, the band of a matching garter belt that was attached to a flesh-colored thigh-high stocking that embraced one perfectly sculpted leg. I felt my penis make a couple involuntary twitches in my jeans. The precursors of an erection. I couldn't believe this was happening. Her gesture wasn't lost on the kid. His eyes locked on the leg show she was putting on for him. I saw his mouth drop open a couple inches. I pressed my ear back to the glass, listening. Woman, I just wanted you to know that I think you seem like a nice young man, Peter. Kid, thanks, Mrs. Jeffries. Woman, please, call me Lauren. Kid, okay, sure. Lauren. Woman, do you have a girlfriend, Peter? Kid, shifting uncomfortably, why do you ask? Woman, I'm just curious, I suppose. Kid, not at the moment, I guess. I mean, I'm not seeing anyone special. Woman, are you a virgin, Peter? Kid, shocked, what? Woman, I don't mean to pry. I'm just wondering, that's all. Kid, reluctantly, after a moment of hesitation, yeah. I guess I am. I peered back in. The woman reached up and caressed his face with one hand. I began to rapidly alternate back and forth between my eyes and ears, not wanting to miss a single second of the action unfolding in that living room. Woman, it's nothing to be ashamed of, Peter. I'm sure someday you'll meet the right girl and you'll make a wonderful lover. The kid didn't say anything. He stared down into his lap, embarrassed. Woman, I know you've been watching me, Peter. Kid, looking at her, alarmed. What? Woman, I know you've been watching me shower through my bathroom window. From your bedroom. I've seen you in your window. Kid, defensive, scared. No. I haven't. Woman, yes you have, Peter. You've been spying on me. Kid, honestly, Mrs. Jeffries. Woman, I told you, Peter, you can call me Lauren. Kid, Lauren, I swear to God, I haven't been. She reached up and brushed her fingertip against his lip. Woman, shh. It's all right, Peter. Don't worry. I'm not angry or offended. In fact, I'm rather flattered. Kid, disbelief, you are? Woman, yes. I'm touched you've shown such an interest in me. A pause, do you like my body? I could feel my blood getting hotter. My jeans suddenly felt too tight. Kid, nervously, yeah. Sure. It's very nice. Woman, do you think I'm pretty, Peter? The kid looked uncomfortable. Woman, repeating, do you think I'm pretty, Peter? Kid, I think you're beautiful, Lauren. I think you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. She seemed flattered by his compliment. She slid across the remaining distance between them and cuddled against him, putting her hands on his thigh. The poor kid looked like he was about to jump out of his skin. I couldn't help but feel slightly amused. Woman, thank you, Peter. That's so sweet of you to say. She looked away, suddenly appearing pensive and sad. Woman, I wish my husband still felt the same way about me. Kid, what do you mean? She turned her eyes down to the floor, ashamed. Woman, things have gotten rather cold between Mr. Jeffries and I lately. He seems more married to his job than to me. We haven't made love in over a month. I don't think he finds me attractive anymore. Kid, I'm sorry, Mrs. Jeff, I mean, Lauren. Woman, it's not your fault, Peter. Kid, he doesn't deserve you. If I was married to a woman like you, I'd think I was the luckiest man in the world. She looked at him intently. Woman, you mean that? Kid, absolutely. She looked at him a moment longer, then pounced on top of him, wrapping her arms around him and kissing him passionately. The boy's eyes were bugging out of his head in shock. But he wasn't fighting her off. In fact, he was kissing her back. I had hit the fucking mother lode tonight. This was every horny adolescent boy's wet dream fantasy come true. A porno film made reality. A beautiful, sexually frustrated cougar seducing her neighbor's teenage virgin son. I envied that little bastard. She broke away from their kiss and looked him intently in the eye. Woman, I want to put on a little show for you. You're going to like this. Kid, flustered, Lauren. Woman, just sit there and watch me, Peter. It'll be just like before, only you won't be looking at me from your window. I'm be right here with you, in the flesh. She got up from the sofa and went across the room, out of my line of sight. A moment later music began to play. I recognized the song. Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution by AC/DC. She strolled back into view with a slow, deliberate, sexy saunter. She stood before the kid on the sofa and began to sway back and forth, working her hips in an unbelievably erotic bump and grind number to the music. She took down her hair, letting it spill down her back, then began unbuttoning her blouse. I almost blew my load right then and there, but willed myself to show a little self-control and hold on, to savor the moment. I felt like I had died and gone to heaven. My heart was pounding so fast and so hard I felt like I was going to go into cardiac arrest. My jeans felt way too tight. I wasn't sure how much more I could take. And judging from the tent shape in the kid's pants, I could see I wasn't the only one enjoying the show. He was giving her a standing ovation while sitting down. He sat there looking up at her in mute amazement as she did a slow, sensual striptease, removing each garment with slow, deliberate motions and tossing it away, then moving on to the next. Blouse, skirt, shoes, stockings, garter belt, half slip. It seemed to go on for an excruciatingly pleasurable eternity. When she was down to just her white lace bra and panties, she stopped and reached for the kid's hands, pulling him up to his feet before her. She looked in his eyes. Woman, Peter, I need you to fulfill my needs. I want you to make love to me.
Kid, stuttering, Lauren, I.
She lifted his hands and placed them upon her breasts. I heard him gasp. He looked like he was about to explode. I know I was. Woman, gently, it's all right, Peter. I'll do all the work. I'll show you how it's done. She took him by the hand and began to lead him away from the sofa. Shit. Where the fuck were they going? Woman, we'll do it upstairs. In the bedroom. They started up the stairs. God damn it. Just when it was getting good. I crawled out from under the hedges and got to my feet, frustrated and still rock hard. My mind raced as I considered what to do. I couldn't miss out on what was about to happen. This was a golden opportunity, a once-in-a-lifetime chance. I stepped back from the house, looking up as a light came on in an upstairs window. I spotted an oak tree standing in the front lawn that was almost in a direct line of sight with that window. It was about 10 yards away and was my best chance. It was risky and I knew I was putting myself in danger of being spotted, but I was willing to take that chance. No way was I going home blue-balled, not after I had come this far. I raced to the tree and began to shimmy up its trunk. A large branch extended out from the trunk about 15 feet above me, in alignment with the second-story window. I carefully swung myself onto the branch and scooted out onto it several feet until I had a view of the window. I licked my lips with anticipation and raised the binoculars, praying silently that she wouldn't shut the curtains before the real entertainment began. The woman, still clad in her bra and panties, and the teenaged boy were in the bedroom. At this distance I couldn't hear what they were saying, but by this point it didn't matter. Their actions were speaking for themselves. She guided him to a big double bed and helped him remove his own clothes. When he was bare-assed, she shoved him backwards onto the bed, then knelt down between his legs and... Oh Jesus, this is it. I couldn't hold it anymore. Oh fuck. I didn't even have to use my hand. I was so wired I came automatically, in my pants, reaching out and clutching the tree trunk to steady myself as I spasmed so I didn't fall out onto the ground below. After my orgasm had passed, I sat there on the branch, calming down, trying to recover for a couple minutes. This was the best night of my life. I congratulated myself on my good fortune and got ready to climb back down and sneak back to my car. I looked back into the window one last time. I wish I hadn't. I really wish I hadn't. I had gotten what I'd come for, pardon the expression, and should have just climbed down the tree without another look back. If I had, I would have been left with the memory of a perfect evening and enough fapping material stored in my spank bank to keep me occupied for at least a decade. But no, I had to fucking look. At first it still seemed pretty normal. The kid was lying on his back on the bed while the woman was busy between his thighs, going to town on his junk. The kid's mouth was stretched open and his eyes were shut, which I at first mistook for an expression of ecstasy. Then I saw something strange. Frowning, I raised the binoculars back to my eyes. The woman, still on her knees beside the bed, came into my magnified view. I didn't understand what I was seeing. Her shoulder blades seemed to be moving. I don't mean naturally, like when a person flexes their arms around. They seemed to be bulging. Like something under her skin was pressing outward. The skin between her bra straps was pulsing up and down, rising and falling like your chest when you breathe. Then I moved the binoculars to the kid and got a better look at his face. I felt my heart skip a beat. It wasn't a look of pleasure on his face. It was a grimace. Then his eyes flew open, seeming to look through the window right at me. They were full of pure horror. He lay there, seemingly immobile, as if paralyzed in fear, his mouth frozen open in a silent scream. Confused and bewildered, I raised the binoculars back to the woman. Her shoulder blades were bulging out even more than they had just a few seconds ago, the skin stretched almost to bursting. They looked like big swollen blisters about to pop. And that's just what they did. Only it wasn't pus that exploded out. It was wings. Two huge, leathery, membranous wings, like a bat's, erupted from the split flesh of her shoulder blades, extending out and flapping slowly. I cried out in shock and almost fell backwards off the tree branch I was still perched on. My head was spinning. Reality seemed to drift away from me. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This had to be a nightmare. I continued to watch, transfixed in disbelief as the wet dream turned nightmare continued to unfold. The kid was turning pale, all the color seeming to fade from his skin. I looked back to the woman. Her face was still pressed tightly to his crotch, and she was still sucking on him, but not gently like before. It had become more forceful, almost violent, like she was sucking an extremely thick milkshake through a straw. She was battening upon him. Draining him. Sucking him dry. Her head was lowered and I couldn't see her face. I looked back to the kid. His eyes were glazed and staring dully at nothing. I could tell he was dead. Jesus H. Christ. What the fuck did she do to him? Whatever it was, she was still at it. Then, as if things weren't freaky enough, they got even worse. The kid's corpse began to dry out. His pale skin turned a dead gray color, then became the brown shade of dried out leaves in autumn. His skin began to desiccate and crack like brittle old parchment. He was shriveling up and withering away before my very eyes, all of this happening in probably less than a minute. All that remained was a twisted, misshapen husk lying on the bed. Like something you'd see in an Egyptian sarcophagus at a museum. The woman, finally finished, stood back up, standing over what was left of the kid. Her hideous, deformed wings were still spread out behind her. She looked down at the mummified corpse, smirking evilly. I finally saw her face. Oh, Jesus. Her fucking face will haunt my nightmares for the rest of my miserable fucking life. Her eyes were red and glowing. And her previously perfect mouth with those full, ruby red BJ lips was jagged and twisted, like a witch's maw. Her teeth had transformed into long, needle-pointed fangs that were still dripping blood. She said something to the kid's dried out remains, I have no fucking idea what, but if I had to guess, it was probably something along the lines of was it as good for you as it was for me? Then threw her head back and began to laugh mockingly. That was it for me. I clambered down the tree and got the fuck out of there, sprinting across the lawn, back to my car. I screeched out of there and sped away, my mind reeling. It's a miracle I didn't get into an accident on my way home. I locked my door behind me, then got drunk and passed out. When I awoke the next morning I was hungover with a blinding headache. I tried to make sense of what I saw, tried to rationalize it. There wasn't really any way I could rationalize or make sense of it. She had sucked the life out of that poor kid, had drained him empty like a fucking Capri Sun juice drink. I tried to convince myself it had all just been a bad dream and none of it had happened. That almost worked, too, until a couple days later when I saw the local news on TV with a picture of the kid's face and a number to call with any information to his whereabouts. The newscaster noted that his disappearance was the latest in a rash of young men who had gone missing in the area over the past few months. No. It all really happened. That woman, no, that thing, that had the body of a sex goddess and the face of a monster is real, and she's still out there, whatever she is. And the worst part is, there's not a goddamn thing I can do about it. I can't go the cops, what the fuck am I supposed to tell them? They'd think I was nuts. Not to mention I'd have to explain to them what exactly I was doing when I witnessed the kid's death. They'd throw me in jail at best, or the nut house at worst. No, scratch that. That's not the worst part. The worst part in the letter I found in my mailbox today. A blank envelope, no stamp, no postage mark, no return address, nothing. Someone must have placed it in there personally. Inside were 2 items. One was a plastic name tag. The name Peter was printed on it. The other was a short note written in red ink, or maybe blood. It read, I know you were watching me the other night. Do you think I'm pretty?